Picture this. You plan out some humor in your speech. And you worked on it, you prepared it. Kind of went through it at home, and it seemed like it was good stuff. Showed to a few people, they laughed in the right places. You think, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring this bad baby home. I'm going to make it work. So you get out there. Get out there in front of your audience. Not a big audience, just a kind of test audience. You're working with 15, 20 people. You get up there and you start going through your speech and you get to those humorous lines that you knew would work so well and they bomb. You deliver the joke and you hear, forget about crickets. You hear nothing. Nothing. It's dead quiet. And you're thinking, why isn't this working? Why does this humor happen? Why is this not connecting? You ever had that happen? Maybe you haven't done a full speech. Maybe it's just a joke. You told a joke, and you told the joke, and afterwards it was just quiet. And maybe you ended up saying something like, you had to be there. But the truth is, it wasn't that they weren't there. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that it just wasn't funny. So what do? Well, you might think, oh, just throw it out. That's not working. That's not going to happen. Forget about it. Do something else. But how do you know if you do something else, it's going to be any better than what you just did? How do you know if you do something else, it's going to actually improve on what you're doing? How do you know you're building yourself up or whether you're just tearing yourself down? How do you know? What do you do? If you've ever faced that problem, and I certainly have, it's a difficult situation to be in. Because as you know, the thing about a humorous speech is it's real easy to tell a humorous speech. Real easy to tell if you have a humorous speech. You know you have a humorous speech if your audience laughs. If your audience doesn't laugh, not a humorous speech. So it's the easiest thing in the world to do an evaluation of humorous speech. You just say, did anybody laugh? No, it wasn't a humorous speech. But then what do? Do you just keep doing the same speech over again and say, well, you know, hey, it's a serious speech now. It's all right. It's a serious speech. No problem. Or you fix that speech. Try to make it better. After all, you believed it in the beginning. Why would it work now? Well, if you find your humorous speech bombing and not working out, that's because you really need to develop ties with your audience. And it's these ties that tickle. And today you're going to learn about ties. T-I-E-S. Ties. Ties that tickle. These are little things you can look for if you start telling some humorous speech, start giving some humorous speech, and it just doesn't work. Go back to the ties. Take a look at the ties. The ties aren't tickling. What's the problem? Work through each one at a time. And the first tie, of course, is T. Every humorous speech is different, and every humorous speech bombs in a slightly different way. Because humorous speeches are unique, when you bomb out in a unique way. And sometimes you can bomb out in something you thought was a sure thing. Because you told it to everybody else, it really worked. And now it doesn't, and you don't know why. When that happens, it may have to do with the T. The T in your humorous speech. It's a small thing, it's a subtle thing, but it's incredibly important. It's something to take a look at. By adjusting T in your humorous speech, you can get better the next time and make it really improve. Sometimes when you throw the T up just a little bit, it changes everything. And T is for timing. T is for timing. You want to make sure you have good timing in your speech. Timing is everything. And timing simply means you want to make sure you pause in the right place, you have as long a pause as you want, as long a pause as you need. Sometimes when you say it had to be there, it's just a matter of the timing. Now what do I mean by timing? You're thinking, well, Tim, when you talk about timing, what's this timing thing you're talking about? Well, here's the thing. A lot of humor depends upon derailing. That is, you set people going down one path, and then all of a sudden you take them off a side path they never expected. And that side path is about where everything is. It's where that humor is. And you quickly go on that side path, then people get it. And timing differs from joke to joke. Timing differs from humorous speech to humorous speech. Just try different timings. And all timing means is how quickly or how slowly do you say something. It's that simple. There was a comedian, Stephen Wright, who had a joke he did about a dog. He said, the other day I was using spot remover and my dog disappeared. Timing. Now, maybe you thought that joke wouldn't work for me. That wasn't funny. But it's all about the timing. How does the timing work? In this case, the joke has to do with spot remover. You're thinking one thing. You're thinking removing like a spot in a fabric. And then spot's a common name for a dog. So if you have spot remover, the dog would disappear. But it's all about the timing. And if that joke didn't work for you, not perfectly understandable because Stephen Wright's a very good comedian. You can find Stephen Wright, look him up on YouTube, and take a look. The guy is absolutely deadpan, and he does this incredible syncing together of completely different things, like spot remover and dog disappearing, and puts them in a way that's just funny. He does it absolutely deadpan. But he has really good timing. And that simply means that when something happens, when he talks about something, he'll mention something else completely different, but in such a way that you're not ready for it. And when you have really good timing, you can tell because that's when the jokes hit. Now the timing works out okay, and you're thinking, hey Tim, the timing's all right. Maybe it's just a matter of the I in your humorous speech. The I factor, the I part of your humorous speech is something that's very important in some speeches, particularly in humorous speeches. In jokes, I may not be as important, may not be as big a deal. But in a humorous speech, I can be a very big deal. Because without the I factor, then you get a little bit of confusion. People get a little bit confused. You have to make sure that I is in there. So T for timing, yes, definitely. But I, very, very important. Because otherwise people get confused and they're thinking, I don't get it. In fact, if your I is off, that most often is the reason why you'll say something like, you had to be there. Because somehow the I didn't get through to the audience. The I factor just didn't get through to that audience. And I is for informing. Informing. Timing is great. Very important to be timing. But you can have the best timing in the world. You've got to inform the audience. Now, Stephen Wright's jokes I mentioned earlier are all about timing, and they kind of presume that you're going to be already informed that how the world that Stephen Wright works in. In his world, spot is a common name for a dog, and a spot is something that you have on a dress or a fabric. As long as you understand those two things, he doesn't need to inform you of anything. You're great. So usually informing in jokes, you don't need to inform too much. But if you have a humorous speech, quite often, you got to inform. And you know you're in trouble with informing when you start to inform afterwards. And maybe you've heard these people give these jokes, or even give these speeches. I'll say, and then my sister came in and she said, Hi, Frank. Oh, wait a minute. Did I mention my sister was there? Yeah, my sister was there. She was there in the background. She was my mom. Yeah, my mom was there too. And the dog was there actually. And Frank was the name of the dog. And, well, you do know Frank was also the name of my dad. And my dad had recently left because of my mom and my... It's gone. It's completely gone. Whatever humor there was really important for that setup. The informing, in terms of a comedian, they call it the setup. And sometimes the setup is very, very important, particularly in humorous speech. Remember, a humorous speech is simply a situation in which you draw humor out of the moment, as opposed to a joke, where you're just telling a joke that's instant. Humorous can be drawn out of the context, out of the situation. If people aren't informed, you aren't informing people about what's going on in the situation, they're not going to get the humor. And then you really can't do much. Then you're left to, well, gee, I should have mentioned this and I should have mentioned that. Sometimes informing is so important. The word order is absolutely crucial. Which word to use is crucial. And all that has to do with how you do the informing. How you do the informing of that humor can change everything. So if you're going back and you want to work at things, you think the timing's okay, make sure you're informing the audience of everything they need to know before you get to the main part, before you get to the punchline. So as long as you've informed everybody, then you get to the punchline, people are like, oh, I get it. That's where the people are going down one way, and suddenly that train derails, that train goes off on a side track, and that's where the humor happens. Where you're going down one way, and all of a sudden, whoop, you go off to the side. That happens when you make sure the informing happens. Now, if you have the timing and the informing, maybe it's something to do with the E in your humorous speech. E is quite often left out of many, many humorous speeches. And usually this tends to happen with beginning speakers, but even advanced speakers can leave it out too. Because E doesn't really have to do so much with the words. In fact, E has very little to do with the words at all. E is a lot more to do with the things that go beyond the words. And if those things beyond the words, that E isn't happening, then sometimes a joke wouldn't work. Sometimes the joke depends entirely upon that E. That's the whole thing. And if you just hear it, you won't get it because the E isn't there. And that's something speakers can forget, is that not only are they speaking, but they're also being looked at. So make sure that E is there. And the E is simply for emoting. Emoting. And emoting is simply showing the expressions in your face. Showing that expression on your face. If you're in a situation where you're informing people that you're upset, or you've got a problem or a difficulty, show that in your face that you're upset, you've got a problem, you're angry, whatever it is. Emoting. Emoting. And that's the thing. Don't forget that you got a face. And the more expressive your face is, the better your humor gets. World champion speaker Craig Valentine talks about the look before the line. And he'll stress that when you're doing humorous speech, you're giving a humorous speech, sometimes it's just that look before you get the line that's key. Absolutely before. The look before the line. So you give a look, a reaction, and then you do the line. And it can be that simple. So if your humor isn't working, it's not quite getting up there, think about that look before the line. Think about how you're emoting. What does your face look like? If you're supposed to be shocked or surprised, do you look shocked or surprised? Video yourself. Ask people. Or just ask people in your audience. Just have a little questionnaire in your hand. What do you think was the emotion right before I said this line? If you're supposed to be happy and they say sad, or you're supposed to be sad and they say happy, then you know that humor is not going to work. Emoting. And that can take a lot of work. A lot of work. And the comedians, the humorists who really get that emoting down It's a powerful thing. As I mentioned before earlier, Stephen Wright is a dead Japan comedian. Partly that means he does very little emoting, but partly it means the emoting he does is of a very serious person. He looks like this very serious person, but he's saying this very bizarre, unserious things. And part of the success of Stephen Wright's comedy comes when you hear these bizarre things coming out of his mouth from this very serious, dependable-looking person. Absolutely serious, no humor at all in the face, but he's saying these bizarre things that seem to be humorous, or at least have to be humorous because they don't make any sense. Like, I was using spot remover, and then my dog disappeared. You're just saying, wait a minute, this is bizarre, this is a joke, right? But his face doesn't give it away. But that's the way Stephen Wright emotes. Now, if your emoting is working out, you got one more thing to take a look at, and that is the S in your speech. Sometimes when you're up there speaking, you find yourself speaking so quickly no one can understand what you're doing, and that's what happens when you don't have the S in your speech. And because you're going so quickly nobody understands what you're saying, it keeps on going along. The problem is no one understands what you're saying, so you have to keep on going on. But sometimes having an S in your speech will help a lot. Otherwise, you talk too quickly, people don't understand, because people can't understand what you're saying. They can't understand what humor is. Can't understand what you're saying, can't understand what humor is. That make sense? Do you know? You're looking at me like, Tim, what were you saying? I couldn't understand a word you were saying up there. Oh, that's right. I didn't put the S into the speech. And that's why I had all those problems. Understanding what the heck I was saying. Sometimes your timing's right, your informing's right, you're emoting all over the place. The S isn't there. And S is simply slowing. Slowing. Now me, I tend to talk quickly. It's just my nature. I tend to talk quickly. Thoughts come into my mind and they just come bloop, right out of the mouth. But sometimes, particularly if you're speaking to an audience where English is a second language, or you're speaking to people who aren't as comfortable with English for whatever reason, it helps to slow down. Slow down your speech just a little bit to make sure people understand your words. Now, challenges, you probably think you're speaking perfectly slow. You may think, I'm speaking perfectly slow, anybody can understand me. Well, do yourself a favor. When you get up there on stage, record yourself in front of an audience and listen to what you recorded. You'll probably find that you're talking a little faster than you thought, or maybe a lot faster than you thought. In fact, when you talk, maybe you're speaking about this quickly all in front of the audience, you really didn't realize it. Because you thought you were speaking this quickly in front of the audience. You thought you were very slow and deliberate, and actually you're talking like this, nobody understands a single word you're saying. Slow down. Now what that means is, sometimes you have to be extra slow. Extra slow. Because you think you're slow, but you're actually not that slow. So world champion Craig Valentine recommends when you rehearse really, really slowly. And you articulate each and every word very carefully. And you go through everything you do as if you're going through it in slow motion. Extend all your vowels, all your words, and slow down. Well, don't need to go that slow. But you get the idea. Slowing. Slowing can be so important for making a joke work. Because people, you can inform people about what happens at the beginning of the joke, but they don't understand it. If you're going too quickly for them, it doesn't help. You may say, Tim, what if I go too slow? What if I keep dragging and dragging? Well, that's called having bad timing. You remember that. So if you're slowing down and you're slowing down, it's not working, Okay, try speeding it up a little bit. Maybe it is too slow. Then slow it down a little bit more. Put more gaps, more pauses in for timing, and just slow down your words to make sure your audience understands things. And if you work on these ties, you're going to find that your humor gets better. Because you put a lot of work, hopefully, into that humorous speech. You put a lot of thought into it. You practice things, you did different things, and you thought, wow, this is so great. And you get in front of the audience and nothing. Nothing. You're thinking, well, forget about it. I just didn't work. Not me. I'm just not that funny. Some people are funny. Some people are. That's just not me. But wait a minute. You put a lot of work into it. You thought it was funny enough to go on stage. You simply have to make it clear to the audience why it's funny. You just have to convince the audience that, yes, this is funny. You had faith and believed in it. You might as well teach your audience that faith and believe in that humor. And you do that by creating the ties that tickle. It starts with timing. Simplest thing you can do is to make sure your timing's right. And that's all about, quite often, just a pause. Sometimes a little bit of a pause between your punch word, the most important word, and the rest of the sentence will help out a lot. Help out a lot. So, Stephen Wright's joke talks about, the other day I was using spot remover, and my dog disappeared. Well, how big of a time do you put between spot remover and dog disappeared? They're connected, but there has to be that breaking point. Try different timings on it. Work it out. If you can tell that joke, and it works, try some other things then. Try different times of humor, different pauses, to see what really will connect. And then informing. Even if the timing is right, if your audience isn't informed about what's going on, you got a problem. And it's pretty easy to tell when you're not informing the audience. Whenever you spent, after you told a humorous situation, you're saying, well, you had to be there. Or if you're kind of backfilling, they call it, we said, oh, yeah, well, you should have known that this happened. Oh, it's good to know that. Oh, yeah, I should have mentioned that. Whatever you say, or you think, oh, I should have mentioned that, that indicates you're not informing your audience. Really important to inform your audience of what goes on. Keep them clued in so they're involved all the way through that talk, all the way through your humorous speech. Very important to do. And emoting. Emoting. Your face is so crucial, so important. Emoting is something that's really going to carry things across. And it's something many speakers forget about. Most speakers forget about their face. Just all the way through, they're talking, they're doing whatever, and they forget about carrying things on with their face. Sometimes success or failure with humorous speech can just determine upon what the face looks like. If you're telling a story about how you were surprised by something and you don't look surprised, then no one buys it. Then no one believes it. World champion Craig Valentine talks about the look before the line. Make sure you get that look right. Make sure you get the right look. Emoting is a simple, powerful way to really fine-tune and get that humorous speech off where you want it to go. And then finally, slowing. Slowing. Slow down just a bit. Make sure people can understand everything you're saying up there. Just slow it down. It's all right. Slow down. And to make sure you're slowing, practice very slowly at home. So when you get out there on stage, it'll sound much more comfortable. Record yourself on stage and you'll discover you probably talk a lot faster than you think you're talking. So the only way to get past that problem is to speak especially slow at home. So when you speed up on stage, it sounds normal. And most importantly, it sounds listenable so people can be understanding. So slowing to make sure people understand what you're saying. When you spend a lot of time working on a humorous speech, and you get out there and it just doesn't work, it's tempting to say, oh, forget it. It's not working. I spent a lot of time in this. It's not working. Just forget it. I'm not going to bother with it. But quite often, if you use the ties that tickle, well, just a few small changes, you can actually create that powerful, magical connection with your audience. And when you do that, and you tell a successful, and you have a successful humorous speech, you feel good. That energy of the audience charges you up. You look good on stage. You're making it happen. You're giving them a great experience. That charges you up. It makes you feel good. It makes the time you spend up there seem flowing, smooth, enjoyable. It's a simple process. Take a look for the ties that tickle. When you do that, your life on the stage and off the stage is much calmer, simpler, better. Your audience will be laughing, and then you can be laughing right along with them. So you get out there on stage, and you're freaking out because things aren't quite working out. Hey, it's all right. Go back, work on your speech, and use the ties that tickle.